Okay guys, I'm out today, so I wanted to teach you what you kind of needed to know. You do already know everything, but we're going to have a practice day and we're going to practice some functions that are piecewise, and we haven't really gone over that. So let's get started. You're going to resort to your worksheet. I'm going to start with 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then you're going to be able to do the rest. This worksheet is going to be due before you leave, so I expect you to put your name on it and turn it into the sub when you're done. And then there is no homework tonight. Okay, so for number 1, we have this quadratic. It's function f of x, that's what we're calling it. And notice we have a negative sign outside in front. Okay, so from yesterday, is that a vertical reflection or is that a horizontal reflection? When the negative sign is outside of the function, that's a vertical change. Anything on the outside is vertical. Anything inside near the x would be horizontal. So this means I have to vertically reflect. Okay, this can be quite tricky when my graph is been moved off of the axes. So notice the vertex is right here, and I have a few other points I'm just going to point out. I have to vertically reflect it, which means it should flip upside down and go this way. Okay? The tricky thing is I have to reflect it over the x-axis. So if this is a point at negative 2, 2, I have to reflect it to the same point on the other side. So that would mean if I'm 2 away here, I have to be 2 away over here. These 2 points at negative 1 and negative 3, since they're at 3, they get reflected to negative 3. And so my graph is going to be reflected across the x-axis. Let's do this second part of it, part B. Okay, what kind of change is this negative 2 on the outside? This is a vertical shift. Okay, which means since it's a minus 2, I'm going to vertically shift it down 2. This inside is next to that x plus 1. Remember when we did quadratics in vertex form, it didn't really go plus 1, it went minus 1. It did the opposite. And so the same thing applies, is this is going to be a horizontal change, but I'm going to move it to the right or to the left because it's going to go negative 1. So all of these points, these 3 points that I picked out here, are going to go down 2 and to the left 1. Okay, so this is the answer to number 1, A. And now I'm going to go back to the original problem. And these points that I picked out, let's start with the vertex here. I have to move it down 2 and then over 1. So that's going to put it here. Again, I went down 2 over 1. These 2 points are going to go down 2 over 1 and down 2 over 1. And so my graph has literally been moved with this change horizontally and vertically, both at the same time. It doesn't matter which one you do first as long as you do both of them. So I'll give you a second to copy those down. Okay, so let's move on to number 2. Notice our function is now called g of x. And again, we have this negative outside for part A, and then part B, our graph has gone through a horizontal and vertical reflection. Okay, so let's start with A. Okay, so I want to point out again the points that are important to us, like pick 3 so that you can kind of get the shape of it. And I need to reflect it again vertically. So I want to reflect it across this axis. So this again is a vertical reflection. So if this point is at 1, 1, it's 1 away from the axis, it's going to be 1 away from the axis on the other side. These other points, since they're 2 away, are going to be 2 away from the axis on the other side, and it's going to take on the same shape. for part B, where it's gone through the transformation, this +1, that's a vertical shift. I'm going to move it up 1. Whereas this -2, which is inside the parentheses next to the x, that is going to move it left and right horizontally. Okay, and it does the opposite. Since I see -2, I actually need to move everything +2. Okay, always do the opposite for your horizontal. So I'm going to go back to my original 3 points, which are up here. Okay, and I'm going to shift it. This vertex point is going to move up 1 and to the right 2. 1, 2. This point is going to move up 1 and to the right 1, 2. This point is going to move up 1 and to the right 1, 2. And all you really need is a few. You could do all of them as long as you get the shape. But notice all 3 of those points were all moved up 1 and to the right 2, because that was the transformation. So I'll give you a second. You can pause the video for longer time if you need to write this down. Okay, number 3. This is where now I don't have a graph that I know. In the first one I had just a quadratic, and the second one I had just an absolute value. But 3 and 4, these are called piecewise. Notice that the pieces are put together, okay, but I have a line and I have a quadratic. Here's my line. I just have a piece of the line. Notice it stops. And then here's my quadratic, a U shape right here. Okay, with piecewise functions, you can get anything. You could have spaces in between, like number 4, or they can be connected. So either way, I am going to reflect it across the y-axis, which is very tricky because every single point has to get reflected. Okay, so let's go along this line and reflect every point. So let's start with this point down here in the beginning. If this is at -1, then it has to go across this line, this x-axis. And so it's 1 away, so it's got to be 1 away on the other side. 0, 0 is going to stay at 0, 0 because I can't really reflect it. This point right here gets reflected down, so if it's 1 away, it gets reflected down 1. This point is 2 away, so it gets reflected 2 away. Okay, this U part is 1 away, so it gets reflected 1 away. And then this piece up here is 2 away, so it gets reflected 2 away. Okay, so here's my line, and then my U gets flipped upside down. So I've gone through all of the points, counted how far away they were from the x-axis, and that's how far away they should be on the other side. Okay, so now let's try the transformation one. Again, I'm going to go back to this original piece, and I'm just going to shift it. So this +1 is going to move it up 1. Every point gets moved up 1. And this +2 is a horizontal change. It's going to move my graph to the right. I'm sorry, opposite direction. You want to go to the left because we're going -2, opposite way. So I'm going to go back here to the starting point at -1, 1 with the line. I'm going to move this point up 1 and left -2. The point that's at 0, 0, I'm going to move it up 1 and to left 2. This point right here, I'm going to move it up 1 to the left 2. And the last part of the line, I'm going to move it up 1 and to the left 2. So here is the line that was moved. Now let's finish the quadratic. This point is going to go up 1 and to the left 2. And the last point is going to go up 1 and to the left 2. So when you have a piecewise graph, it's kind of trickier, but make sure you move all of the pieces. Okay, so I'll give you a second to copy that down, or if you want longer time, you can pause the video. And the last one. Now I could have asked you to reflect it, but I think we've had some practice with that. So this time we're just going to shift it. Notice the horizontal shift is inside -2, which means everything needs to move to the right 2 spots. Okay, so anything near the X is a horizontal change. Anything on the outside is a vertical change. Okay, all right, so everything gets moved to the right too. So let's start with this quadratic, and my picture is kind of off. It's way off, and I'm sorry about that. Let's see if I can move it over. Okay, yours keeps going all the way, and this bottom point is at -5, right, on your paper. So if you were to move that to the right too, at -5, the point that's at -5 would be at -4, -3, so it would be right here. Okay, this vertex point, okay, is at -3, 2. It's going to move 2 over. So it's going to move 1, 2, and now it should be at -1. So I know that I have this right here. Okay, the point that's at -1 is going to move 2 over. So 1, 2. And so here's the rest of that upside down absolute value. Okay. Now this function is an upside down square root. Okay. The point that's at -1 right here, 0, -1, is going to move over 2. So 1, 2. Okay. Notice you have a point at 1, -2 right here. That's going to move over 1, 2. And your last point, and you kind of can't see it on my graph, and I apologize, is at 4, -3 right now. So you're going to move it over 1, 2, and it should be at 6, -3, and it's at the bottom of my screen. But you can do that on your paper, and it's going to be an upside down square root. Okay, so you don't continue it. You literally just take all the points that you have, and you just shift them over to the right too. Okay, so you're going to have a practice day. You're going to try some on your own on the bottom. That's from yesterday. You should be able to name the vertical shift and horizontal shift. And then the back side, these are going to be those piecewise graphs. Okay, they get crazy. There's some breaks. Make sure you keep the integrity of the graph and you just shift it, reflect it, or move it. Okay, so this is due before you leave. And I'll see you tomorrow.